there, and a very warm welcome to Chazingdra Chats, the show where we take a stroll through the life stories of people in the Pokemon community, discovering the 6 Pokemon on their dream team along the way. Welcome to the 50th episode. Fantastic to have reached this point. I'm Charlie Merriman. I'm merry by name, I'm merry by nature, and I otherwise go by the name Chazingdra. I am a host and commentator for the Pokemon Video Game Championship Series and a content creator. And this week, as every week, I very much hope my guest and I can make your day merry, because for the 50th episode, I have the honour of being joined by WOLFE GLICK. Wolf, how are you doing?
Doing well, yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on the show. I'm looking forward to taking a little bit of a deep dive into everything you and things that people might not be so aware of, even though we see you so much in your content and on Pokemon streams and so on.
I'm excited as well. Also, I apologize if my camera is freezing. It's freezing for me. We will see if it's freezing for everybody else.
Yep,
technologically challenged, unfortunately.
We will find out the hard way.
That'll be the reveal.
We do what we can. Well, if anyone watching or listening isn't so familiar with you, can you give a brief introduction to yourself?
Sure. Hello, my name is Wolf. I am a competitive Pokemon player, and I also am a content creator around competitive Pokemon. I do a lot of competitive Pokemon stuff.
Yeah, and with good reason. I mean, 10 regional championship wins, now 2 international championship wins, winner of the recent Global Challenge. You unmasked yourself as the winner of that on stage at EUIC in potentially the coolest possible fashion. I mean, the crowd quite literally went wild. Great. Shall we do this? Shall we take a little stroll through your life story and your 6 Dream Team Pokemon? So,
sure. Yeah, maybe.
What we're going to start with here, and I thank you so much for your honesty, what you're sharing with us today. Very appropriately, starting competitive Pokemon video game 2011 to 2012.
Yeah, so back in 2011, I was a freshman in high school. I had been playing Pokemon my whole life, but not competitively. Like, I got into it when I was probably around, like, I got into the franchise when I was just a little kid, and, like, was obsessed with the trading cards, or was obsessed with the anime. It was kind of in the peak of 90s, Pokemon fever, so I was not the only, youth enamored by Onyx or whatever. And so, yeah, I'd always kind of played for fun. I was into the video games. I'd been playing like single battles on fan like community forums at the time. Like, just like, I remember you would have to schedule with people because the game wasn't that popular. And so you'd have to go online, and like, I remember coming home from school and like being like, okay, like Wednesday at like 6 p.m. Eastern, like I'm going to get online and we're going to like use this code and we're going to connect and battle. Like, that's how you had to battle people there, because it was, there wasn't like an in-game ladder or anything at the time. And so, yeah, basically I found out that there was a local tournament near me within 45-minute drive from where I grew up. And so I went to my parents. I was like 15 at the time. And I said like, hey, will you take me to this tournament? I couldn't drive. And they were like, okay, if your grades are good. The tournament was in May, and I think I found out in October. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Sounds good. I'll get good grades. And so the thing was, at the time, I'd only been playing single battles, but this tournament was using a different format. It was something I'd never heard of. It was called, VGC. And yeah, basically, like, I learned the format. I remember my first VGC team had Archaeops on it, because I was like, this is probably good. That's not true. That didn't hold up. But I was interested in the Trick Room strategy, and I kind of kept iterating on this concept and eventually built this team that I really liked. And yeah, May came around, and it might have been March, actually, but I think it was May. Anyway, I went to this tournament, and, it was, back then it was very different. It was single elimination, best of 1. So you played one game, and if you lost, that was it. At the instant you lost a single game of Pokemon, you were out of the tournament. But somehow I ended up winning the whole thing, and the prize back then was a trip to the national level of tournament. And yeah, that was kind of the beginning of my Pokemon journey. That's how it got started.
To explain what you said about Archaeops there, yeah, with the ability Defeatist, it will seriously mitigate its own stats once it's lost a certain amount of health, but you brought it to the tournament, and you still won the tournament with... Sorry.
I phrased that badly. When I first was learning the format, I put Archaeops on the team, but it didn't make it to the tournament. It was just like, I just remember that was like my first iteration of the eventual team that I would bring. No, I see. Yeah, no Archaeops making it to the tournament. I don't think Archaeops is any tournament.
That's a real shame. That was nearly Archaeops' sort of redemption arc. But
yeah, I don't think I'd be here if I'd brought Archaeops, so perhaps...
Wow. You heard it here first. What could have been? Do you remember what was on the team that you brought?
Yeah, of course. It was Cofagrigus. The core idea was it was a strategy built around Trick Room, which allows slow Pokemon to move before fast ones. The 2011 format was really weird. And so, like, basically, it was a really fast and really offensive format in terms of, like, what people were using. And so, Yeah, basically, my team was Cofagrigus, Scrafty, Reuniclus, and Conkeldurr, and I would use those 4 Pokemon all year. That was the core of the team. And then I would change it the last 2 slots. So in DC 2011, the regional that I went to, I brought Emboar and Hydreigon as the last 2 Pokemon. I needed a Pokemon that could beat Amoonguss and Chandelure, which were the 2 main bad matchups. Hydreigon good into Chandelure, Emboar with Lumberry good into Amoonguss.
And of course, back then, formats lasted quite a bit longer than they do these days. So I guess you could really make inroads with that team. Incredible that you went ahead and won your first tournament. I mean, that obviously is a good sign, a good omen for them what was to follow. Do you recall the time when your interest in Pokemon went from youthful, playing the games, enjoying the story, to specifically competitive?
I think it was kind of a gradual process, like basically back in Generation 4, that was the first generation that introduced Wi-Fi. So it was the first generation where you could really play against other people. But for some reason, like I couldn't, like the Wi-Fi that the games used didn't work with Diamond and Pearl. So it wasn't until Platinum came out. Like for some reason, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, they worked with my house Wi-Fi, but like Diamond and Pearl didn't. So I mean, once I realized you could play online, I started looking for like fan communities. I had been involved in the trading card game community at the time. Like I was on fan sites for that. I just started playing that way before. I played like the trading card game competitively for like 7 years when I was a kid, but I wasn't very good. But I would go to, states and I don't know if I ever made it to a regional, but like cities and states and stuff. But yeah, basically like I was familiar with kind of fan forums, and on the trading card game forums, there were places where you could battle against other people, but I was better than a lot of the people on those trading card game forums. So I started kind of gradually looking elsewhere and this was all just, single battles, like, kind of no real rule set other than, like maybe people would be like, I don't want to play against legendaries, but even that was, variable. So, basically like I just started like looking online to find people to play against, and kind of one thing led to another. And eventually I found a fan site that was built entirely around battling compared to the ones that I'd been on, which were mostly around, the trading card game. And within that battling forum, there was this, like a sub forum for real life tournaments. So I don't think there was one specific moment. Like I wasn't like, I hopped on the ladder and I got beat really bad and it made me want to, lit that fire. It was more just like I just kind of followed my interests, and eventually it led me to, this real tournament in life, in this tournament in real life, I should say.
Yeah. Did you find at that point that that was where the focus of your interest was? You then weren't sort of simultaneously enjoying just playing through the games as well?
I feel like I was always interested more in the battling aspect, because once you beat the main game of Pokemon, like it's, there's not that much post-game content a lot of the time. Like I loved like the Battle Factory. That was my, that was my jam. Like, and I loved the spin-off games as well. But like, I wasn't somebody who would just, replay the same games over and over again. I kind of I liked building up kind of like my one game rather than restarting, especially because there's only one save file. At least back on, the DS era. I guess now you can make multiple profiles on your Switch, but yeah, with only one save file, I didn't really want to like delete my game and start over.
Yeah, fair enough. And fascinating to hear that you had such a long career playing the trading card game as well. But we'll go from there now into what's going to be the first Pokemon on your dream team. So as a reminder, everyone, the aim is not for Wolf to build the most competitively viable team, but Wolf can do that if he so chooses. It's just the Pokemon that would have been the most special to Wolf over the years, and he can find it how he wants. I have no idea what they are. Wolf's chosen these in advance. So tell us, Wolf, what's going to be the first Pokemon?
I would say Cofagrigus as my first Pokemon. It's a Pokemon that I really associate with that first year playing. I brought it to every single tournament, and I would lead with it in most battles. I would send it out first most of the time, and it's a really funny Pokemon. I think I really like Pokemon that are goofy looking, and I think Cofagrigus certainly is. It looks like it has the little like wavy arms, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like little like the little like sticky arms that you would use to like, smack your brother or whatever. And it was also really good. Like it was a cool pick, and it's a Pokemon that really I don't recall ever seeing have any use outside of when I used it. So it felt not only like a signature Pokemon, but like also a Pokemon that like I really associate with my success that year. So yeah, I would put Cofagrigus as my first Pokemon.
Love that. And it's not just the arms, it's got a big grin on it.
Yeah.
And the red eyes as well. Yeah, I I think that's a really, really fun choice, and it represents perfectly that initial competitive era. Have you tried to make Cofagrigus work in future formats and tournaments?
I always have my eye on it. Like I would love to make it work again. There's a couple Pokemon like that where like I would really love to make them work again. I kind of always am aware of them. Like here's a secret: Swoobat. I've had my eye on for over a decade now. There was like one format where Swoobat could be strong, and I almost brought it to the World Championships, but like I in the end bet against it. But Yeah, like I think that in the right circumstances, like there are Pokemon like that I'm kind of like always aware of how they could do. Like Girder was another one where I thought Girder could be strong at times, but it like never panned out. And now the power level is really high, but you never know. Like I think in certain formats it could be possible, but there's just a lot of really strong Pokemon nowadays. So some of these kind of these Pokemon that weren't even great when they were released are definitely struggling to keep up now.
Yeah. With each new generation, as you say, certainly the power level overall does tend to increase. But as you say, there might be a niche that it finds somewhere along the way. Yeah, and Gerda, the pre-evolved form of Conkeldurr, we do sometimes see that in competitive Pokemon where a pre-evolved Pokemon will end up having a bit of a niche. Porygon 2 is a classic example.
Yeah.
But we won't get too deeply into that. If you're enjoying this chat with Wolf, everybody, please do like and subscribe. As Wolf can attest to, really does go such a long way. Thank you, Wolf. Far further than it might seem, so would hugely appreciate it. But from here, we're going to now go into dealing with failure from 2013 to 2015.
Yeah, so, my initial seasons were really strong. I went first at regionals into first at nationals, actually, which won me a trip to the World Championships, where I then placed sixth at my first World Championships. And then in my second season, I finished second at my first regional, which won me money to go to nationals. Back then, I wasn't making money. I was a high school kid, right? My parents were super supportive, but I don't think they were going to fly me to California or Hawaii, you know what I mean, to play Pokemon, at least not back when I was, 15, 16 years old. And so I needed to win the trip. And the only way to win the trip back then was to get first, second, third, or fourth at US Nationals, which was an invite-only event at the time. In 2012, was it invite-only? I forget. I forget if 2012 was invite-only. 2011 definitely was. But you needed to, in 2011, you had to top 16 a regional to qualify for nationals, and then you had to top 4 nationals to make it to Worlds, with the trip at least, which I needed. And so, basically, my second season, I went second at regionals, which won me money to go to nationals, which I won again, which won my mom and I a trip to Hawaii for Worlds, where I placed second. So I'd had an incredible first 2 seasons, first and second at regionals, first at nationals, second and sixth at Worlds. And I was like, this is great. I did so well. Now I'm going to win Worlds immediately. And then I had my worst season ever, which was 2013, where I think I took a lot of the wrong lessons from my success and ended up going very off the rails. And basically, just didn't really kind of allowed myself to get overwhelmed by the things that I could do and did not without stopping to think about the things that I should do in the team builder. And I built a lot of really, really bad habits. And so 2013, I would say, was definitely a failure of a season. And it was my worst Worlds performance for a couple of years. I finished 25th, which certainly isn't that bad. And I've certainly done worse since then. But for a while, it was my worst finish until 2018, actually. So in the first 7 years, it was my worst finish. And then 2014, I had to spend a lot of time kind of, unlearning a lot of the bad lessons that I had learned in that 2013 season, that I think it took me even longer to fully unlearn them. Honestly, even through, I think, Sun and Moon era, I think I still was kind of lingering with the result of that 2013 season. But it was definitely hard. It was hard to go from, this person who had such incredible finishes and was doing well at every event up until, then to suddenly become a player who was, I don't think I top cut a single event in 2013. So it was a really hard fall from grace.
It's amazing how well you were doing initially with really just your entrance into the game. I mean, did you find in those initial tournaments that went well for you that as you were battling through, you were learning things? Were you taking a lot on board? Or was it only when you started to not go so well that the lessons kind of piled on?
I think I have a very growth focused mindset, and that's been the case since I was 15, 14. And so I think I was always learning things, but the problem is that some of the things that I was learning were not true, right? I was trying to take learnings from my experiences, but it's actually harder than you might think to look at a tournament and then a result and be like, oh, I know exactly why I did well, or I know exactly why I did badly. It's actually, I didn't find it easy, right? I think it's really easy to draw the wrong conclusions, but as a kind of headstrong 16-year-old, I was perhaps a little bit more equipped or more want to do than I would be, a decade later. So I think I was always learning lessons, but I think a lot of those lessons were not based in fact, but rather in my own perception.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. What would you say when those worst results started to come in? What would you say was the main lesson that you learned from that experience?
I mean, in the long run, I think the lesson was to take the right lessons. That was really kind of the takeaway there, is don't just think about what sounds nice or what makes a nice story. Really look at why things, what is causing things to be the way that they are, rather than looking at what you drawing the conclusion that you want things to be. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that I got.
So, I mean, at the time, especially because at this point, of course, you were pretty young, it must have been you must be sort of understating quite how difficult it was to accept. Did it sort of lead to you ever just taking a step back and let the dust settle, or did you just continue to plow on doing tournaments?
I think at the time, I took losses really hard back then. Like, honestly, like prior to like 2018, honestly, like I had a really hard time losing. Not like I was, like not like I would rage or not shake my opponent's hand or anything, but like I was really hard on myself whenever I lost, and to the point where I think I actually developed an unhealthy relationship with the game. Like I eventually had to change the way, like change my relationship and change how I dealt with failure, because I was just so hard on myself after every loss that eventually it became unsustainable. And when I say loss, I mean like even when I was doing well, like I got top 8 at US Nationals 2015, and I like really was not happy with that result. Like I really beat myself up, and I'd come in with like very little prep. Like my team had fallen apart, so I'd had to like build something new last second. And so by all means, it was like a really good result. It put me at number 1 in championship points going into Worlds. Like I got the day 2 bye for Worlds, and like it was a great result by all means, but I was upset about it. Like I was really upset that I didn't win the whole thing, which I think was, looking back, that was kind of a turning point for me, that like something had to change with the way I was thinking about things, because it's not sustainable to think that you're going to win every tournament and then to be really hard on yourself when you don't win. So, yeah, I think I was really, really hard. And actually at Worlds 2015 and then the following year at Nationals 2016, the failure felt so bad when I didn't win that I like really seriously considered stopping playing. And I was pretty, like I ended up obviously deciding to keep going, but yeah, it was to the point where I was having such a hard time with the losses that I wasn't sure it was worth it to me to keep trying anymore, especially not having had as good of a season since my first really 2 in a while. 2015 season was good, but not quite that same level. Because I didn't have like the great Worlds finish or the Nationals win.
Be kinder to yourself. Yeah, I think it's a lesson that so many people in the game would do well to bear in mind, just because competitive Pokemon is a game that has so much variance at play, and so even if a competition doesn't go particularly well for you, it may well not be anything to do with your fault. And I'm sorry that it was difficult having to learn that lesson sort of real time. But as you say, it sounds like that time you took the right lessons from it.
Yeah.
And of course, then paved the way for much more success in 2016. But before we get into that, it's time to ask you what's going to be the second Pokemon on your dream team alongside Cofagrigus.
Let's see. So this is like 2014, 2015 era. But the second Pokemon I would say is Executor. That was a Pokemon that I used to get second at the World Championships in 2012. So even though it's a little before this era, I would say that like Executor really was kind of my signature Pokemon for a while. It was the Pokemon that people associated with me for a while. It was another really off-meta pick, but like it was the one that I had kind of the most success on the biggest stage with. And so, I really, really like Executor. It's one of my all-time favorite Pokemon. I really like that it's super goofy. And yeah, it was also really good at Worlds 2012, and I also used it to get top 4 at a regional in 2013 as well. So, I don't know. I really like Executor. I think it's funny, and it's a Pokemon indicative to me that like it was the moment where choosing to bring Executor to Worlds was a big moment where I decided to like bet on what I thought was strong rather than what like the general meta or like what other people thought was like which Pokemon could win. And I think it's like, yeah, really been a good memory of and a good reminder that like even if a Pokemon isn't widely considered to be strong, that it can still do well.
It's a good egg. And it's a nice reminder of the experimentation available to us in competitive Pokemon. I mean, at the time of recording, we just saw Lunala win the Vancouver Regional Championships, which is a restricted Pokemon that no one really had too much of an eye on. So, yeah, there are so many Pokemon available now. Just see what works for you. And yeah, as you say, another goofy pick. I like the idea that you've got like your own goofy meta going alongside the actual meta.
Yeah,
that's the video game. Like, which goofy Pokemon are doing well right now? That's what we want to know. Executor with it's 4, 5, 6 heads alongside Cofagrigus, and they're all grinning inanely besides you. But yeah, certainly a Pokemon that we've come to associate with you through competitive. We've got Ghost, Grass, and Psychic on the team so far. We'll see how that continues to develop. But now it's time to head into pretty pivotal time for you, winning Worlds 2016.
Yeah, so like I said, the year prior I had like been, or even that year, the tournament prior, I'd been considering stopping competing because like I was just I had some unfortunate out of game stuff happened at Nationals 2016. And yeah, like also it was my worst finish at the tournament at that point. I went 5 wins, 4 losses, which felt especially bad because I was number one on the in-game ladder going into the tournament. And so like I was expecting a big finish, and then it was my worst finish yet. So that was pretty disappointing for sure. But yeah, basically I worked with my friend Marcus, who's one of the most important people in my life, one of my closest friends, and worked with some other friends as well. We worked on the team with Brendan Zeng, who would use the team in top 8, or to take the team to top 8 in seniors at the World Championships that year, as well as like kind of tested with some other friends who were also going to the event, or some who were going to the event, some who weren't. And we ended up basically building this team that at the time, there was one team concept that was considered to be the strongest team in the game. And with the benefit of, almost 10 years of hindsight and, the 5 years that I played beforehand, it was, I can say confidently, the most dominant team that we've ever seen ever. It was called Big Six. It was the combination of Primal, Groudon, and Xerneas, who have ridiculous synergy together, paired with Smeargle, who at the time could learn Dark Void, and whose Moody ability at the time could both boost its evasion and its accuracy stats. Paired with the two strongest Mega Evolutions, Mega Salamence and Mega Kangaskhan. The last slot was originally Talonflame, but would later change to variants like Cresselia and Bronzong. But yeah, it was a team that was really, really, really dominant. And it won the majority of events in the 2016 format. And whenever it would not win an event, like people thought they had like an adaptation that could beat it, a new variant of Big Six would appear, whether, with Bronzong or Cresselia or Crobat or Amoonguss. And then it would like the Big Six team would win again. It was thought to be unbeatable, basically. And the problem was that the teams that could beat Big Six were losing to the other teams. It was kind of this rock, paper, scissors meta where Big Six beat everything unless you had a specific counter. If you had a specific counter, you lost to anything that wasn't Big Six. And if you had anything that wasn't Big Six, you lost to Big Six. So it was this like really complex, not complex, actually, very simple relationship with, everything. And it dominated the whole year. It was winning the first tournaments. It was winning the last tournaments before Worlds. But my friends and I basically built a team that could beat not only Big Six with ridiculous consistency. I don't think any of us ever lost to one, but also could beat the other teams in the tournament as well. So in terms of kind of team building, crowning jewels, I think that's got to crown jewels is the expression. I don't know. That's like the pinnacle for me in many ways. Is the team that we built there, the team that like really in many ways carried myself to first place, Marcus to a top 4 finish, and Brendan to top 8 in the senior division. So yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was this thing I'd been chasing for years, and I had really started to not give up on, but like lose the belief that I could do it one day. And so to finally achieve it after so many years of hard work just felt incredible. And to do it alongside, my best friends also felt, just so special.
The Marcus that you mentioned, of course, Marcus Statter, who's had an incredible performance as a player and now a fellow caster here in the EU scene for competitive Pokemon video game.
Yeah, so, Marcus Hamann now, actually.
Marcus Hamann, yes, thank you very much indeed.
No problem.
Yeah, recent marriage, congratulations to you, Marcus. I'm still going by that legacy name. 2015, as you say, it was a decent season, but it still wasn't your best. But then heading into 2016, this is also the first time that you've mentioned building with other people. Was that something you had been doing before, or did it only just start around this time?
No, Marcus and I started building in 2013 together, but I don't think I was really stubborn about the Pokemon that I wanted to use, and the Pokemon that I wanted to use for the most part were pretty bad. So although we would work together, I think it was our first time bringing the same team to the same events together. Mm-hmm. Like I think Marcus did something different for 2014 World and for he did something different for 2014 Worlds, and 2013 Worlds he also did something different in the last chance qualifier. So and 2015 as well, he did something different. So so it was our first time like kind of building together and finding a team that we were both happy with, basically.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I guess the first question is, when did you first meet Marcus, and was it just one of those chemical things that you immediately clicked, just a friendship thing, and that's how you decided to build together and so on?
Yeah, so we had talked a little bit during 2011, my first season online, but we didn't meet until 2012, actually at the World Championships, where we just gotten in a couple days early, and Marcus had gotten in before his other German friends had got in, and so there were a bunch of us like American players just like hanging out in a pool, I think like, tossing the ball around, whatever. And Marcus came over and he's like, hey, like you guys are Pokemon players, right? And we were like, yeah. And he's like, I'm Marcus, like, can I hang out with you? Like, my friends aren't here yet. And we were like, of course. So yeah, like, hung out with him a little bit, like good vibes, but like, we didn't like, I didn't walk away from that being like, that's going to be my best friend, But then it was so that was before the tournament happened, day 1 happened. And back then, day 2 was top 8, top 4 and finals. It wasn't the way it is now where I guess the final day of the tournament is just the finals. And so basically I was preparing for my match. I was playing against Sajin Park actually the next morning. That was my opponent and I knew it. The 2014 world champion who, like most iconic win with Pachirisu. And the problem was that I had played Sajin the prior day, and I had lost to him. And so he was one of my, I knew I had to play him again, but I was trying to figure out a plan. And my mom, was tired, so she was going to bed. So I was like, oh, it's okay, Mom, I'll go down to the lobby to do some work. And as I was just hanging out there, Marcus and some German friends came by, and I saw them, and I was like, it's kind of on a whim. I was like, hey, like, good to see you guys. Like, would you mind helping me with this matchup? Like, I don't know, like, just kind of asked out of the blue. And Marcus was like, yeah, like, and the friends were like, yeah, and they all sat down. And I was really amazed at, like, I'd never really talked to somebody about Pokemon in this way before, but it was really clear that, like, the way that we were approaching the game was really similar. And yeah, Marcus sat down and like helped me build a plan. And yeah, then the next morning I felt really good. Like we really clicked in that moment. And it was clear that we like really worked together well. And then the next morning I beat Sajin, and then I beat the other person who I had played the day prior, and then eventually lost in the finals to Ray. But yeah, like that was really the birth of our friendship, was because I think we like were able to meet in person and realize that we had really good chemistry, as you said, with each other.
I love that it was initially Marcus who said, oh, can I hang out with you guys? And then it was kind of a full circle situation where you then said to Marcus and his friends, can I ask for help from you?
Yeah.
That really paved the way for such a strong friendship now. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
My final question on this point is, when did the phrase world champ difference come to be?
I want to say it wasn't for many years. I want to say it was around 2021.
Oh,
it was
okay.
Like it wasn't until I was content full time, and I think it was after I started doing my intro. Basically, every once in a while, I would just be in the shower. This is not a joke. I would be in the shower, and I would just be not thinking, like just like brain off. And I would be struck by this idea, like it's happened twice at least, where I'm like, oh, this would be really funny, or like, oh, this would be really good, like from a content angle. I'm not somebody who's always thinking about content. I'm not like always trying to clip farm or whatever. Perhaps I should be. Perhaps I'd be a better creator if I was. But I don't really think about content. Like I don't think about doing things specifically for content very often. Normally, I just try to act like myself, and that's easy because that's all I do. But I was just like in the shower, and I was like, the phrase just popped in my head, like, yeah, like that's the world champ difference, baby. And I was like, oh, that's kind of good. And I tried it out, and people like really liked it. Like I didn't intend for it to be a big thing, but the thing is, like, I only said it a couple times, and then other people started saying it a lot, and I was like, oh, people really like it. And so I kind of just ran with it. But nowadays I actually don't even say it that much. It's mostly a phrase other people use to talk about me, and when I use it, it's actually mostly used ironically. Like I normally, like if I make a really bad play, then I'll be like, yeah, world champ difference, baby, kind of like as like a way to poke fun at myself. But it's still, has kind of stood the test of time, despite the fact that I think there was like a 6-month period where I didn't say it a single time. Like not for any reason. I just like, I don't know. I didn't feel like I had to spam it, like it's like, I don't know, like, but it still has kind of stuck around. It was the same with my intro. I did a little MS Paint intro, and I had a little jingle for it. And that also just came to me in the shower one day. Like I was just like the whole thing fully formed popped into my head, and I was like, this would be funny. And then people really liked it. So hopefully I get another one of those soon, because I don't seem to be controlling when they happen, but I'm grateful when they do.
Well, a nice advert for having those brain off shower moments, everybody. If you feel like you're overthinking things, maybe just switch off that brain and you might come up with your catchphrase. Love to hear. Right, and now it's time to discover what's going to be the third Pokemon in your dream team alongside Cofagrigus and Executor. Is it going to be another goofy one?
Yes, Scrafty.
Okay.
For a while, Scrafty was like my signature Pokemon. There was a period where like I never got worse than like top 8 or maybe top 16. Basically, like I really liked it. Like I played the game in a way that I really, really enjoyed hearing about, or not hearing about. Enjoyed it. Like I played the game in a pace that I really liked. Like I liked Intimidate. I liked Fake Out. I liked how bulky Scrafty was. It was on my first team, the Trick Room team. But like in 2011, and I also used it a bit in 2014, and maybe a little in 2013 when I got Intimidate. I don't think too much in 2013, just once. But yeah, it's a Pokemon that I really like, and it unfortunately can't really keep up anymore. But for a while, it was like a really good, solid, just like bulky support Pokemon that could do a lot of things. So it's a Pokemon that I have fond memories of.
Scrafty, yeah, certainly another goofy one, and a dark and fighting type. So another new couple of types on your team. Scrafty, it's interesting. It's when I spoke to Ben Kiriakou for this podcast, of course, another player with a lot of competitive standing, stretching back many years, also a caster now. Scrafty also made that list for Ben, and it's a testament to just how prevalent it was in that era, I suppose, having Scrafty come out again. You mentioned there it sort of speaks to your playstyle of bulk, essentially bulkiness and being able to buy a turn with Fake Out and dropping Intimidator, dropping the attack stat over on the other side of the field to give you more wiggle room. Would you say that is still a playstyle that you lean towards?
I think that for me, like the way that I like to play the game is built around the idea of control. And controlling, like I think that I am at my best when I am limiting my opponent's options and where I'm like
Right.
really covering for all of their options. And I think abilities like Intimidate, which lower an opponent's damage output, and moves like Fake Out, which prevent an opponent from moving for a turn, I think still fit really heavily into my preferred playstyle because like these are all moves like tools that you can use to really limit your opponent's options. Like rather than some people prefer to like kind of overwhelm the opponent with offense, but I prefer to like mitigate the opponent's options and then kind of like take them apart once they're pinned down, basically. So yeah, I would say that it's still if Pokemon were given stat buffs every generation to help them keep up, I think Scrafty is a Pokemon that I would still be in consideration to use.
You say that even though we now, of course, have Incineroar.
Yes, that's true. I mean, I do use Incineroar quite a bit, you know?
Oh, you do?
perhaps more than most other people.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, in case anyone's unfamiliar, Incineroar, another Pokemon that has access to Fake Out and Intimidate,
That's
and
right.
one that's run rampant in competitive Pokemon video game ever since it was introduced, really. Kind of like just a boosted version of Scrafty. To a
Yeah,
certain
it's like
extent,
Mega
in terms of the
Scrafty,
capabilities
basically.
it has. Yeah, it's well, yeah. And maybe that won't be the first mention of Incineroar, we'll have to see. But now, from here, into your origins creating Pokemon content.
So basically, it was 2016. It was before I won Worlds, actually, and I have to give credit where it's due. I was inspired by Aaron Cybertron Zhang, one of my best friends and one of the best people I know, who was really the pioneer for VGC content. You know, back in the day, VGC was extremely niche. It's hard to explain how different things are nowadays compared to then. Like VGC videos would rarely get more than 10,000 views at the time. Like if you got 10,000 views, that was like the ceiling, that was the cap. So people didn't even know what it was. Like people didn't even know that there was competitive Pokemon. And when you mention competitive Pokemon, most people assumed you were talking about fan formats of single battles. So it was just a totally different time. Nobody was playing VGC. Nobody cared about VGC. Like it was viewed as like something like a joke, to be honest. Like other like communities within Pokemon viewed like didn't take it seriously even, and even the VGC players, like the prominent, for those of us who were trying to grow the game, it was treated as a joke, basically, where many prominent community members, many of which are still around today, they turned it into it was a joke on Twitter. Like hashtag grow the game was a way to poke fun at those of us stupid enough to believe that the game could be bigger, because like it was a laughable idea. It was literally a joke to people that the game, like everyone was like, yeah, it's too niche, nobody cares about it, will never be esports, nobody will ever care. But despite this, Aaron Zheng was out there, you know, making videos, even though other community members weren't always like very kind to him, even though people like were like, yeah, we're wasting your time, like who cares? And it seemed like he was having fun with it. He started in 2014, and I, you know, as my friend, I watched him do it for, you know, 2 years, and eventually I reached out to him and I said, hey dude, like what you're doing seems kind of fun. Like it doesn't seem so complex that I couldn't like give it a shot, but I really don't think I'd be very good at it. I should find these text messages somewhere. I probably still have them. But yeah, I reached out to him and I said, hey, like I don't think I'd be very good at this, but what do you think? Like you've been doing it. And he was like, no, dude, like I think you'd be totally good. You should give it a shot. And so he helped me get set up with like my equipment and like helped me figure out what I needed. And I think early, maybe it wasn't my first video, but pretty early on, when I started posting, like within the first couple weeks, probably, he like helped, we did a little collaboration. We played against each other and he helped drive some traffic to my channel. And so, yeah, I mean, honestly, like things have turned out really well for me, but kind of the common theme is that I'm like, it would be cool to be like, yes, this is all my master plan and I've orchestrated everything perfectly. But the truth is that like most of the time I don't have some kind of big grand plan. I just do the thing that seems like it makes sense in the moment, or like the thing that I'm interested in the moment. And then I just get kind of lucky and it turns out to be, something bigger. So, yeah, Aaron basically was like, hey, like, you know, I think I reached out and said, hey, like, I'm interested in this. He said, I think you'd be good. Let me help you get set up. And then it was just a hobby for me. Like I was in college, I was working as an RA, I was doing a cappella, I was like taking, you know, a lot of classes. I took between 18 and 22 credits every semester, I think, which is 18. Maybe there's one where I did 17 actually, but basically the maximum amount of classes you can take without getting special permission, I think is like 6. And I was doing like 6 to 7 every semester, basically, because I don't know. Anyway, so I was really busy, so I didn't have that much time for Pokemon, but I just started making content for fun. And then the timing worked out really well, where 2016, not only did I win Worlds, but that was also the summer of Pokemon Go, which was a huge spike of interest when it came to competitive play. It was a huge spike of interest for Pokemon in general. But like that was good for people making Pokemon content. And then that following fall, Pokemon Sun and Moon came out, which a new generation brought a ton of new people in. And so everything kind of lined up perfectly for the perfect storm. And while it was still a hobby for me for many, many years, like the initial kind of snowball allowed me to get to like 40 or 50,000 subscribers within, that first year, maybe 2 years, where I would kind of flatline for a while until Sword and Shield, but like still was I was the second biggest VGC YouTuber at the time, which was something that I was proud of. And the person ahead of me was Aaron, who will forever be my VGC content goat.
It's all in the timing, especially in this online era. Everything that you're saying, Wolf, of course, absolutely fascinating, and so many pearls of wisdom. The most interesting thing to me right there was you did a cappella. That is something I just had no idea. That's so cool. I'm not going to make you sing, don't worry. Do you keep up with singing now?
I haven't been. It's something that I would like to do, but I've been so busy that I haven't had the time. I would love to join a choir in the city where I live, but I haven't made time for it yet. But who knows? Maybe this year's the year.
Yeah. Do you have like a favorite song that you sang as a group back then?
I had a couple. There was this one song called "No Place Like Home." It was really difficult to sing. It wasn't a song that you would traditionally get in a cappella. The artist is Marianas Trench, but I really liked that one because it was really hard, and I always found that like the really difficult pieces were the ones that I found the most fulfilling personally.
Yeah, often the way. Incredible. And just to go right back to the very first thing you said there, the idea of people saying competitive Pokemon is never going to be any bigger than it already is, and now look where we are. I mean, the numbers that we see attending these tournaments eclipsing anything that would have happened back then, and just on the up and up and up. So really exciting time and fascinating to get your perspective on that. And now it's time to get your perspective on the fourth Pokemon on your dream team. So is it going to be another goofball alongside Executive?
No, this one's serious.
That's crafty.
This one's serious. This is Primal Kyogre.
That's much more serious.
Yeah. I was thinking I wanted a Pokemon from my Whirlwind, and I thought about Mega Gengar, but I really feel like Primal Kyogre was more. I thought one of the restricteds made more sense, and I chose Primal Kyogre because I actually used it a couple times to good success. I got top 4 at regionals following Worlds with it, and I won NAIC with both Primal Kyogre and Mega Rayquaza. But I feel like there's one specific Primal Kyogre set that I used with Water Spout, Opulse, Ice Beam, Protect, and the Mega Rayquaza one varied a little bit more. Yeah, I think I only brought Primal Kyogre I brought it to regionals with Dialga, which I won in 2016, which I forgot about. I brought it to Worlds, which I won. I didn't bring it to Nationals that year. I brought it to the following regionals, which I got top 4 at. And then I brought it to NISC 2019, and I won that too. And I actually don't know if I used Primal Kyogre anywhere else. Like, the Worlds 2019, I brought Rayquaza Lunala. At Nationals that year, I brought... Heck, did I bring that year? 2019? Something stupid. Oh no, I won that one. Oh wait, I won. I'm the best. And then I think that maybe there's a regional I'm forgetting, but I think almost every time I brought Primal Kyogre, I did very well with it. I have 3 major wins with it, and I don't think I used it more. I can only think of 4 tournaments that I brought it to. There's probably more that I'm forgetting because I went to a couple regionals back then, but honestly, I honestly don't remember any other ones. So. I'm sure there's a few that I'm forgetting, but yeah, it's a Pokemon that I really like, and I've had a ton of success with it. So, I think it's a really, really strong Pokemon, but I don't feel that way about regular Kyogre. Regular Kyogre, I don't feel any attachment to, but Primal Kyogre, that's my homie.
Wow. Okay. I mean, unfortunately for you, you do have to go through the stage of Kyogre to ultimately get to Primal Kyogre, but okay, that's noted. For anyone who's not so familiar, can you just briefly explain what Primal means in this context?
It's basically Mega Evolution, but better. It's a form change that increases Kyogre's total stats by 100, and Kyogre already has quite good stats, and also gives it a better version of its Rain ability that can only be shut down by Groudon or by Rayquaza or by switching out. And it's a permanent Rain that causes all fire moves to do 0 damage rather than half damage, and can't be overwritten by Sand or Hail or regular Sun. So it's very powerful. It's an extremely good Pokemon.
Very different from the Make It Rain that we see these days. But
yes.
Absolute downpour on the field. And another new type joining the squad as well in water. Primal Kyogre makes total sense here. So, welcome to Wolf's Dream Team. Now from here into full-time content creation.
Yeah, so in 2020, I should say in 2019, Sword and Shield came out in late 2019. This was November. And At the time, I'd graduated from college in 2018, so I had been working full time for a little over a year, basically. At this point, it was like I started working in August, and then so in August of 2019, that was my 1 year, and I wasn't happy at my job. I was actually pretty unhappy. I did not like it at all, and so I was like looking for another job, and I applied to this company that like it doesn't really matter what they did, but I really liked it. Like I didn't really care about what they were doing, but the company culture seemed really cool, and the people I met seemed really cool, and they liked me. And so I was applying, and I was like, it was like a couple month process, but I was like, yeah, this is it. This is my ticket out of my job that I don't like. And I made it all the way to the final round. Like I went to this in-person interview. It was like this big thing. And at the end, they like called me up and they said, hey, we really liked you, but like we need somebody with more experience, unfortunately. So you're our second pick. Sorry. And I was like, oh, well, that sucks. Like that was my, now it's like November, December, and that was like my ticket out of this job that I didn't like. And alongside this, Sword and Shield were coming out, and I really wanted to give it a real proper push. I was still doing content creation for fun, posting about once a week, but like, even though technically I post once a week now, it was much lower quality. It was like no editing, no, like just, turn on the camera, talk for 30 minutes, post it. That's it. And I was like, okay, like I'm going to try and up the quality and the quantity that I'm putting out, most of the quantity. Actually. And so I started posting daily, and I did this for like maybe October started, and then like November, December, the games came out late November. My channel really started to grow a lot. I think a big moment there was I had a collaboration with Alpharad, who is a huge YouTuber and a good friend, really, really great guy. Really, really exceptional person, and a great creator as well. And through this collaboration, my channel was able to grow like dramatically. It kind of it showed off a lot of the reasons why Sword and Shield's early days were really fun. I think a lot of people found the channel from that. And with Sword and Shield just being a new game release, back in the day, the way that it used to work is that all the growth of a generation was like within the first 2 or 3 months. Like you had basically 1 to 2 months to kind of get all of the growth that you could. And then after that, it would totally flatline until the next generation. It wasn't this kind of like steadily increasing curve. It was like big jump and then like super flat. So it's a lot of stress when a new generation comes out, or it was back then. And so, I like started like basically posting more often, and then my channel started growing really quickly. I passed 100,000 subscribers, which is a big goal of mine, prior to February of that year. And, I was unhappy at my job, and my channel had grown a ton. And so I kind of was toying with the idea of going full time. And I reached out to mentors, I reached out to friends, I gave it a lot of thought. And eventually I decided, you know what, I'm unhappy at my job, and this is kind of going really well right now. I'm going to quit my job for just 6 months. I'm going to leave the workforce for 6 months. Then I'm going to go back into the workforce, find a similar job somewhere else. Hopefully one that I like more. And that will be that. Like I won't really, permanently disrupt my career. I won't be leaving the workforce for too long, but like this gives me the chance, like 6 months should be okay, basically, to take a 6-month period away from my career. And so I quit like February 27th, 2020. And within 2 weeks, with less than 2 weeks, we were on full lockdown from the pandemic. So my plan ended up changing because nobody was hiring from the pandemic. And I wasn't trying to go back and work remotely, like start a new job remotely. That didn't sound fun. So my 6-month plan eventually became much longer, much longer. And I'm really glad that it did, because it gave me a lot of time to kind of figure out a lot of the things that I think were holding me back when it came to having a good relationship with content creation, or like bringing out my full potential when it came to content creation. But yeah, that's kind of how it got started in terms of like full time. That's how it switched from being a hobby to being a job for me.
Fascinating. And again, it's all in the timing. It just so happened that you quit your job just before everything went into lockdown. And not only that, but February 27th on Pokemon Day in 2020. I mean, that's a sign. Sure.
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't even realize that.
That's incredible. And again, just multiple more shout outs to the community that helped you get to where you are now. Incredible. So that's how it started. And then how did the content continue to develop from there, that story? Yeah,
so basically I did content creation full time, but I was posting unedited videos, and I was trying to post every single day because I believe that's like what I should do. Because like, I don't know, like that's just what when you're starting out, somebody tells you something, you just believe it, right? And unfortunately, posting every day for like a year really burned me out. Like I wasn't posting videos that I was really proud of. I was always just thinking about like, what video can I make today that like, is topical or whatever. I wasn't thinking about how do I make something I can be proud of. I was just thinking about like, how do I get my work done for the day? And also I was struggling with the self-employment part of being a content creator, which is like, there's no guidelines, you know what I mean? Like there's nobody checking in on you. There's nobody making sure that like you have good habits. So I was like, my sleep schedule was all out of whack. Like, I was like, staying up till 4 a.m, waking up at like 11, and like, just like wasn't living a healthy lifestyle. You know what I mean? And I did this for under a year. And I remember in like December of 2020, it must have been, I was like just super burnt out, like really, really burnt out. And I ended up taking a break in December, which is not good practice, but I was like, I needed the break. So I was like, you know what? Like I got to take a break. And I stepped away and I ended up talking to my friend Justin about it. And I was like, dude, I'm so burnt out. I feel so bad. Like, I don't know what to do. And he was like, you need editors. I was like, yeah. He was like, no. Like, you need to get editors. Like, you are one of the biggest channels on this platform that doesn't have like an existing, like that isn't like, a second channel of a bigger, not performer, content creator, that doesn't have any editing. And I was like, yeah, but like, I don't know how to like find editors. I don't even know what I'm looking for. And he was like, hire me. I will find you good editors. And I was like, all right, bet. Like, let's give it a shot. So I hired him, and he found me an editor who I still work with today, as well as a couple other really, really, really good editors. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I didn't know how to make edited content. It was totally different than what I'd been doing before. But now that I had these really talented people who, in hindsight, were basically given an impossible job, where I'd send these people 10-page scripts with no direction and no idea what I wanted. And I'd be like, can you make this into a video? And they would like figure it out, and they did a great job. But like, it shouldn't have worked that way. Like, they should have needed more direction to make videos that were as good as they were making. So Justin found really, really, really good people. And has actually turned it into a little consulting business where he like does that for other YouTubers and helps like build strategies for them as well. Justin also helped me get started with like an initial strategy, too. But yeah, basically, like I realized through Justin's help that I needed editors, that I needed a way of upping the quality and the type of videos that I was making. And I think like that was the next major step after that kind of first year. And it took me a while again to figure out what types of videos I wanted to make and what kind of videos would, like, I don't know, help grow the channel and grow the scene. But eventually I got there with the help of some other friends, like my friend John, who is also a YouTuber. But yeah, that kind of was the one of the biggest steps within today, like content creation, was finding good editors and deciding to make edited content.
Do you recall the moment, sort of thing? The moment when you thought, okay, I've just gone from, I mean, 100,000 subscribers is still absolutely incredible, but the moment in your mind where it shifted from, okay, now this is the big time sort of thing?
I don't know if I've had that moment, honestly, because like, okay. I don't know, a core part of my philosophy is that this is going to be surprising to some viewers, but I really hate arrogance. I hate it as a trait. Like I always hated being looked down on when I was younger. And so I really try not to look down on other people. And I think I actually succeed in doing this. Like, people seem to think that I'm arrogant because I will talk about my accomplishments, but I never do it in a way that like puts anybody else down. You know what I mean? Like, and also I think sometimes I just talk about the accomplishment because it's relevant and people view it as bragging when like, I'm just saying what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like, there's like, I'm just trying to do the best that I can do. And while I think I've definitely gotten way, way better, like, I feel like to be like, oh, this is the big time I don't know. Like, I feel like it's a comparison to other people. Right. And that just isn't really my vibe. Like, the person that I'm comparing myself to is my ideal of what I could be, if that makes sense. And so like, of course now I am in the big time and I can say that out loud and I can acknowledge it, but like, it wasn't this thing that I was chasing, so it wasn't this moment that I was looking for. So when it happened, if it happened, I didn't notice it, if that makes sense. Yeah. That's crazy, but yeah.
No, it makes total sense. I mean, yeah, I think it's easy for an outside perspective to say, oh, okay, he's gone from this to this, therefore he must be feeling this. But when you're in it, and it's just step by step, gradual, one thing at a time, yeah, you're just still riding that wave.
Yeah.
My final question on this point is, what's it been like for you having Pokemon go from hobby to work? Has that been a difficult transition?
So this is a question I get asked a lot from my non-Pokemon friends, and I think there were times where it was difficult, but nowadays most of my work is actually writing. Like almost all of it is writing. Like, because all my videos I'm reading my scripts that I write. For actually my work, I play about 8 hours of Pokemon a month, if that. Like, I didn't play any Pokemon for my excluding the tournament videos, which like I don't really count those because I'd be playing anyway, like even if I wasn't making videos. Like basically competing in VGC tournaments is my hobby and working on videos is my job, but like most of my videos they don't have any gameplay in them. And when they do, it's not I have other people to recreate the games that we're doing from tournaments. So the only real type of content that I do that features gameplay is like the online tournaments where I'm doing stuff like trying to win with a starter Pokemon team or trying to make, no guard shield cold work, right? But if I didn't do one of those in February or January, and it's, March now. So like that's 2 months that I didn't play any Pokemon for my channel. And so I don't know. Yeah, I think because of that, because like even though they're both Pokemon, they use very different skill sets and they use very different parts of my brain. And so it's actually nice because when I'm feeling burnt out of VGC, I can go work on content. And when I need a break from content, I can go play VGC. And even though they're both Pokemon, they end up just functioning. They serve very different roles and use very different parts of my brain. And so actually it isn't a problem that they're both related to VGC because I just interact with them both in such different ways.
Fascinating. Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. Now it's time to discover what the 5th Pokemon is going to be on your dream team.
What did I put here?
Executor, Scrafty, and Primal Kyogre.
Gothitelle. Yeah, Gothitelle's a real favorite of mine. I think with all the Perish Trap wins, especially recently, I felt like I had to do Gothitelle, but it's a Pokemon that I really like, and it's a Pokemon that I think is really cool because even though it's kind of been power crept, the ability of Shadow Tag is just so powerful that it's still able to keep up. And there's been a couple tournaments where I'm like the only Gothitelle player, and yet I'm still able to kind of win. And so, I really like Gothitelle. I think it's a really cool Pokemon, and I like the way that it changes the way that the game. I like how it changes the way the game is played in many ways, and I like that it gives you control over the game there as well. So, it's another Pokemon I'm quite fond of.
That element of control coming back in the theme that's cropping up here, the way that you like to play. Yeah, Shadow Tag trapping in the opponent's Pokemon on the field so they can't switch, barring a couple of exceptions.
Yeah.
Certainly upping the control there. So, when did you first discover this Perish Trap mode of play? And for anyone familiar, if you could just briefly explain what Perish Trap is.
Sure. So Perish Trap is a strategy that combines the attack Perish Song with the ability Shadow Tag. Perish Song puts a timer on all Pokemon that hear the song, which is all Pokemon on the field, that will count down starting at 3 and going to 0. And when the timer hits 0, any Pokemon that heard the song will faint. Sounds very powerful, but all you need to do to get rid of the timer is switch your Pokemon out, which any Pokemon can do as long as there's a Pokemon waiting in the wings to switch in. And so the core strategy uses the Shadow Tag ability, which prevents switches as long as the user is on the field, and tries to stay alive for long enough while that Perish counter can tick down to 0. Sounds very strong. In practice, very hard to pull off and very easy to mess up. I don't remember the origin of why I started liking Perish Trap. I think I didn't invent it. I heard about the strategy in 2012, but like in 2012, Gothitelle didn't have its hidden ability. And Mega Gengar didn't exist. So it was a strategy that you used around. I mean, my first team used Wobbuffet and Mismagius. It was like a gimmick. It was a gimmick, but like not a gimmick that you could win with. Like a gimmick that's like, haha, like this is funny to troll my friends, you know? Similar to Normalized Trap, actually, if for any listeners familiar with that, but that's a bit of a tangent, so I won't get into it. But basically, like I just thought it was cool. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I can win. Like I can win without like actually attacking. Like this is so sick. And then when Gothitelle was given Shadow Tag in 2013. The Perish Song users weren't really improving, but it was like more feasible. And so I don't know. It was just like I was so enamored by it from the get-go. I don't really remember exactly why, but I think I was so focused on defense when I was like 2013 era that a strategy that allowed you to win by only surviving without actually needing to attack, I think was really appealing to me back in the day and to some extent now.
There are so many playstyles that will suit so many different kinds of players. Being able to stay on top of them all, very difficult. And being the master of one of them, as people will call you for Perish Trap, is a surefire way to get those fantastic results. Gothitelle, not a surprise to see it joining the team here, but before we discover the final Pokemon on your dream team, it's time to talk about what's next.
I mean, I think that right now is a really interesting period because we don't know for sure what's coming in the future, but my personal theory is that things are going to get what I think right now is that things are going to explode for competitive Pokemon in a way that we can't fathom. With the release of Pokemon Champions, with the release of Generation 10, presumably, even though that's not confirmed, I'm sure it's coming. And with the growth of competitive play in a time where it should be the most dead, breaking records, literally breaking attendance records and having events sell out in under a minute. I think that what comes next for the scene is going to be massive. I think we're going to reach levels that like I can't even I don't even know what to think about them. Like I literally can't wrap my head around what it could be. And that's exciting. And so I think for me, what's next is I want to continue to improve my content. I want to continue to improve my ability to create videos that I can be proud of. I want to continue to produce these really high effort, high workload videos like around tournaments and stuff. And I'm really excited for Pokemon Champions and for Generation 10 eventually. I'm really excited for the future of competitive play. And I can only hope that I will continue to adapt and continue to kind of push the envelope when it comes to showing people why competitive play is something special.
To unpack Pokemon Champions there, this was something recently announced on Pokemon Day, and if you're not familiar with that, it's 27th of February every year when we tend to get news about the upcoming year for Pokemon, what's in store, and the day the first games were released in Japan in 1996, I believe. So this year on Pokemon Day, we had the reveal of Pokemon Champions, which seems to be a competitive focus game. We really don't know too much about it at this stage. But as you say, Wolf, yeah, it could really change how not only the competitive game is played, but how the main series games are played as well. And it's very exciting. The prospects of what that might represent. You know, I'm reminded at this point of what you were saying earlier about people saying competitive Pokemon will never be bigger than it already is. And, well, I mean, look at it now. We'll have to see where things go. One thing I wanted to ask you about here is, of course, last year we saw your debut of casting. You were casting the Indianapolis Regional Championships in 2024. I wanted to ask, obviously you'd been in the competitive game already for a long, long time before that first cast. How did your expectations match up with reality? What were your main takeaways from casting? Was anything harder than you were expecting?
I was pretty nervous going in, but I was really lucky in that I was working with people who I'm very comfortable with. Like Aaron, as I said, is one of my best friends. Rosemary and Gabby are both incredible and very professional as well. I think it was certainly challenging. I went in with a strategy of basically knowing that I wouldn't be as good of a caster as the people who were very experienced with it, simply because I didn't have that same experience. So I went in basically with a strategy of trying to focus on a couple key points that I thought were important. And so basically, I thought that what I lacked in skill, I could make up in targeting by focusing on, just a couple of really specific things. And overall, I feel like the reception was positive, and I feel happy about how I did. Not that there are many ways in which I could improve, and I definitely struggled to listen to the cast back at times because I was like, oh man, that could have been so much better. But overall, I think that casting is very difficult. And it's very exhausting as well. But overall, I'm really happy that I did it, and I hope to do it again in the future.
I totally agree. I think you did a fantastic effort. And of course, we're always all going to be our own harshest critic. But exciting to see how that avenue may develop for you as well. But for now, it's time to round out this dream team. Also, what's going to be Pokemon number 6?
You already know what it's going to be. I gotta have Incineroar on the team. The best Pokemon of all time. You know, I'll give you a little spoiler, but basically, like I've been ragging on Incineroar for a while. But then I was thinking about it recently, and I was like, I mean, like, what do I not like about Incineroar? Like, I don't have listen, I'm not like this is my favorite designed Pokemon ever, but I never really like or just like Pokemon based on the design, except for, well, actually, never mind. There's some Pokemon who I'm like, I'm not as crazy about this, but for the most part, the design isn't the most important factor to me. And the reason why I've always disliked Incineroar is because it's the best, because it's just like, it's winning too much. But you know what? I think I've started to see some of myself in Incineroar, right? Like, how can I look at this Pokemon and be like, you're winning too much and I hate you? Like, that doesn't make sense to me, given who I have become, I guess. So anyway, I haven't fully figured out my relationship with Incineroar yet, but I am the winningest Incineroar player of all time, and it has recently gotten me quite a few tournament victories. And so I don't think that I can really, I don't know how much longer my hatred will persist. So it's going on the dream team.
I mean, it sounds like it's already ended, to be honest,
we'll see.
The hatred. I mean, I was vaguely had in mind, like, oh, maybe I'll build up the suspense of Wolf's final Pokemon, but yeah, we all knew. We all knew it was coming. This famed relationship, and of course, not only was it on your EUIC winning team recently, the Europe International Championships, but it was kind of crucial in the end game of the deciding
last
third
Pokemon
game.
Standing.
In that victory, exactly. So, couldn't have been a more poetic end.
Yeah.
This means, Wolf, you've got quite a few, like, cheeky grins on your team here. Your team is Cofagrigus, Exeggutor, Scrafty, Primal Kyogre, Gothitelle, and, of course, Incineroar. So we've got a couple of repeater types now. We've got a couple of Dark types. We've got a couple of Psychic types here. As I say, they've got a affinity towards grinning or grimacing in some way as well, and it's kind of really is Pokemon through the ages from Generation 1 right up to I guess Generation 7. We don't have anything beyond that necessarily, but per representation of all the ages of you. So Wolf, now I've got to ask you, if you choose one of these to be a partner Pokemon, which would it be?
Incineroar, baby! I hope it's distributed at NAIC. I hope they give me a Wolf Incineroar distribution. That'd be so funny.
I know there's a lot of talk on the street, yeah. It is often the case that a Pokemon that wins a prior international championships, that the next one will be distributed with the name, in your case, for example, Wolfe's Incineroar. Or we've had Patrick's Pelipper in previous seasons, for example. We all want to see it, and we would love to, but I think... I was wondering if you go back to basics, you go with a Gothitelle, strategy that's worked for you so much, or Executor, because it really does go all the way back in time. But yeah, Incineroar, right now, maybe your answer would change in like 5 years' time, but right now, Incineroar is kind of the talk of the town.
That's right. Who knows? I believe Incineroar will stand the test of time. That's my prediction.
Yeah. Incineroar, you are Wolf's partner Pokemon. And now, slightly different kind of question for you, Wolf. If you were a Pokemon, what do you think you'd be?
I don't know. Blipbug. Blipbug.
Blipbug.
I don't know. How do you answer this kind of question?
Well, I would often start with like, what type do you think you'd be? And I can see fire for you. I can see psychic for you as well. Yeah. Actually. Those are the two types that immediately stand out to me. So fire psychic, that could be Delphox.
I hate Delphox.
It's not going to be Delphox then.
I hate Braixen.
It could. Okay, well, it's definitely not Braixen either. It could be.
I don't hate Finnegan.
Victini. Victini's pretty good.
Yeah, Victini. Yeah, no. I think I'm Blipbug.
You think you're Blipbug?
Yeah.
Okay. I can kind of see it.
Blipbug's really funny. I like Blipbug.
There's a goofiness to it for sure. Yeah, I kind of like that. For some reason, it works. I can't really put my finger on why. So yeah, hats off to you. What about you all? Do you agree that Wolf of all the Pokemon would be a Blipbug? I've got to be honest, Wolf, this is not a Pokemon's name I thought I would be saying.
Blipbug, and it evolves into Dottler.
And then Orbeetle.
Yeah.
Fun, and that is Bug Psychic ultimately, Orbeetle, so there is that. To be honest, before you said Blipbug, I'd kind of forgotten that it was a thing. So thank you for reminding me. We don't have it in Scarlet and Violet, for example, but do you all agree? Let us know in the comments. We'd be fascinated to read. And speaking of you all, now time for your community questions. I posted online, as I always do, asking for questions for Wolf. We, of course, had quite a few submissions. I had to whittle it down to a list of 5, so I apologise if your question wasn't chosen, but I had some really good suggestions here. So I apologise if I mispronounce any of your names or handles as well. To kick things off, got a question from Replicate Cult here. So I'm going to quote this. Hey Wolf, big fan of you for a long time now, and always wanted to ask, what do you think makes the biggest difference for you to be as consistent as you are?
What's the biggest difference? I think that basically I stand on a mountain of work that I think it's hard for players to replicate without, pardon the pun there. I think he said the name is Replicate Cult.
True.
This is somebody I know. I believe they're a Unite player. If I'm not much mistaken, though I could be wrong. But basically, I think that people look at me and they only look at kind of the up periods, right? Or they only look at the last couple of years, right? And you have new players coming in who are having a lot of success but aren't seeing the same level of consistency, right? Players who have really high peaks but don't have that same average. And I think that for these players, it's very easy to say what is he doing differently, right? And I think something that people don't talk about very often when it comes to me is that I've been playing for 14 years. This is my 15th season. And I spent every single one of those seasons trying to be the best in the world. And I wasn't for most of them. And I can say that without hesitation. But the thing is that I was still trying and I was still learning and I was still growing. And I mentioned earlier, but I have a very growth-centric mindset where I never blamed anybody else for my losses. Even still, I was able to be kinder to myself. I'm now able to handle losses much better because I'm able to, be kind to myself in defeat. And so it doesn't feel quite as brutal, but I still never blame anybody else. Even if a game is, 95% out of my control, I will always look to the 5% that I can control. And when you have that mentality for 15 years, a decade and a half, right? You are able to be you're able to work very hard on your bad habits and really be very, I feel like I am a hedge that has been trimmed very intentionally. You know what I mean? I've all the dead branches, all the imperfections, not all of them, I'm literally still getting better. At EU, I see there was a ton of things that I know I could do better. Even though I won, I still look at myself, even in victory, and say, well, I won, but man, there were some moments in there where it could have gone otherwise, right? And I could tell you, I have a personal reflection of 4 pages of all the things that I did well and all the things that I could do better. So I think really it's my ability to reflect and my ability to grow and my ability to, I think ironically, perhaps to some listeners, is put my ego aside and say, I'm always looking at myself as a version that could be improved. And I'm never being I'm the best, that's it, I'm done growing. And I think that having that mentality for 15 years has resulted in a a form that is very consistent.
As with so many things, I mean, just keep your mind open, keep open to the possibility of growing and improving, and it will serve you well. And it's a really good point. Yeah, all we see is the tip of the iceberg. Of course, another thing something that's much harder to replicate exactly is just, again, the amount of time that you spend with a competitive game. So thank you so much for that question, Replicate. And now, a question from Spiderweb07. How do you know when it's the team that needs adjusting or you're just playing poorly?
The team should make it easy to win. If it's not easy to win, like, it's one thing if you were like, oh, like, I feel like I could have, like, you need to be able to look at games and say basically like, why did I lose? And if the answer is your team, well, then the team probably needs adjusting. And if the answer is your play, then the question becomes, did you have the tools to win? Your opponent just like played better than you, or did you make macro mistakes or whatever? Or did you not have the tools? And if the answer is ever you didn't have the tools to win, or like you had the tools, but you had to like make hard reads to get it right, or you had to play really aggressively. Of course, there's always going to be bad matchups, but like your bad matchups, in my opinion, should be doable still. Like maybe they're like a little bit harder, but every matchup in theory should be playable with a good team. Easier said than done, but that's what I aim for. I basically like I see how easy is it to win and how hard do I have to work to win, and those questions are the starting point of understanding whether or not your team needs to change.
Yeah, I think it's a question that's on so many players' minds for a lot of tournaments. So it's interesting to get your perspective on where that boundary is. Thank you for your question, Spiderweb. Again, I apologize if I'm pronouncing this name wrong. Gazu Gaming Life on Instagram. If you could visit any country to play Pokemon, which would you choose and why?
Milwaukee! I love Milwaukee. That's my favorite country. I don't know.
Country.
I mean, I could visit any country to play Pokemon, right? Like, but honestly, right now I'm trying to travel less. You know what I mean? I've been traveling more than I would like to. So, honestly, like if it was for like the World Championships, I prefer having it close to home. Like, I think it was actually really hard to be in Japan and in Hawaii because the time difference was so brutal, and also they were so hot, and I don't do well in the heat. If I had to pick a place for Worlds that wasn't the US, I would probably say somewhere in Scandinavia, maybe Finland, maybe Sweden, just because it's much more temperate. Like, if you put me in like a freezing place, that like I'd be great. I'd be like, yeah, send me to Antarctica for Worlds, but like not actually, but like that kind of like cold climate, like that's where I really shine. So somewhere more temperate if I had to pick a place for Worlds, which I think is the heart of this question.
I think that's, coming at it from a perspective of what's going to enable you to play best. That makes a lot of sense. Pokemon aside, just on holiday, where would you most want to go?
Let's see. Places that I've been that I really liked. I'd love to go back to Prague one day. I love Scandinavia. I haven't spent that much time there, but whenever I am there, I really enjoy it. So, like, I would love to spend an extended time in Sweden. Visiting friends in Germany is always fun. I would love to go back to Japan, putting aside time difference, and I would never go back in the summer. Japan, I love you, but holy cow, that was brutal. I went to Australia twice. I really love Australia. I would love to go back to Sydney and Melbourne, some of my favorite cities in the world.
Do you have a number one of places you've never been before?
Japan was my number one for a while, but now I've been there. I don't know. Yeah, sorry. I don't think I do, actually.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Thank you very much for that question. Now, Kathy, or number one Gladion fan, would like to know, what's your all-time favourite song?
I really struggle with favorites.
You can name a few.
Fun fact, I don't actually listen to music very often. That's my little...
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually extremely rare. What songs do I even like? I don't know. I actually can't think of a single song that I like right now. I'm so sorry. My brain is fully turned off. I'm in Pokemon mode.
That's fine.
It's a great question, and I'm sorry about the answer, but yeah.
Well, for a start, the fact that you rarely listen to music is an interesting answer in itself. But B, why don't we sub in that a cappella song that you enjoyed that you mentioned?
Yeah, No Place Like Home.
No Place Like Home. There we go. No Place Like Home. Perfect. Thanks for that question, Kathy. Now, final question here from Pablo Blow 18. What's your advice to people just starting out competing seriously?
It's all about mentality, dog. Like, it's really all about, like, people like get so fixated on results and on like this championship points and all this other stuff. Like, you got to play for the love of the game. Otherwise, like, and I mean this honestly, truly, like, you won't be able to play for long. Honestly, I've seen so many people who like start because they love the game and then get caught up in the qualifying for Worlds or earning a travel stipend or like, whatever other goal, and they make it about the goal, not about the game. And in a game like Pokemon with so much variance where it is so difficult to win consistently, like if you start fixating on results or on any kind of finish, like you will lose your joy probably. And it doesn't mean you can't get it back. I've seen people get it back, but yeah, like you got to play for the love of the game, and you got to meet people who make you want to play the game. You know what I mean? Like it's all about the people, truthfully. Like if you're like you can play Pokemon on your own for a little bit, but like I don't know, the most of the joy that I have gotten from Pokemon comes from the experiences that I've shared with my friends, not from the tournaments that I've won. So that's my advice: is find your people and focus on the right things.
Wise advice indeed. Encourage each other. Thank you very much for that, Wolf, and thank you for all of your questions there. If you'd like to submit a question for a future guest on Chazingdra Chats, then at Chazingdra on X and Blue Sky, that's where I post the call out for questions from my guests. I'd love to hear what you'd love to hear. And so, from one kind of advice, Wolf, to another kind now. Question I ask all my guests towards the end of the episode: what advice would you give, looking back from now as the celebrated Pokemon creator, but also accomplished Pokemon competitor that you are, all the way back to the younger Wolf, who went to that very first tournament, actually went ahead and won, didn't bring the Archeops, sadly. What advice would you give to that younger you?
I don't think I would give any advice. You know what I mean? Because I think for me, it was really important to like make the mistakes. I think for like one of my weaknesses just by nature is that I'm very headstrong and I'm very stubborn. And like, I believe that I can like find a better way of doing things. And I think that's a big reason why I've had success in Pokemon, is because I'm willing to bet on Pokemon and to build teams that like other people wouldn't consider. Like I'm always betting on myself. But I think it was really important to me to make these huge mistakes and have these big failures, because I needed to learn my limits, and I needed to be told explicitly, like, you're not invincible. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can do it, but that doesn't mean you will do it. And so I think that if I came from the future and told my younger self some of the lessons that I've learned, I think it wouldn't matter, because I would be like, well, I know better, even than, the older version of me. And I'm happy with how things turned out, honestly. And I feel like I've become a really well-rounded, kind person. And I think that I had to go through a lot of the things that I wish I hadn't gone through at the time. I think were important for me to become a person now who I can really be proud of. And so, sorry, Past Wolf, but you're not getting anything out of me. You gotta make your own mistakes the old-fashioned way.
I think it's, well, I was about to say really good advice, but you're not giving any, but I think it's a really good point. You've got to make these mistakes yourself. That is the quickest and the best way. Thank you so much, Wolf. And the chat does not end there, because we'll now be getting into Wolf's Rapidash round. 15 or so minutes of bonus questions that Wolf has not prepared for. And as ever, there's always so many more things to dive into here. I want to take a bit of a deeper dive into the Road to Worlds documentary that has just started to come out on the Pokemon YouTube channel, following Wolf and other people in the community over the course of the 2023 to 2024 season. I want to hear more about what Wolf enjoys beyond Pokemon in downtime. I want to hear some hidden talents or fun facts about Wolf that we might not expect. And we've already heard about Acapella. Will there be more? And the planning behind, and I have to bring this up, the iconic "it wasn't enough" moment at the Europe International Championship recently. I want to hear how long that was potentially brewing, or how much of it was just in the moment. Questions like that and many, many more. If that sounds of interest to you, then my Patreon is linked below, where you can support me as a creator. But fundamentally, really appreciate the fact that you've listened to or watched this episode in its entirety. But if you want to get to know Wolf a bit better, the Patreon is there, linked below. And Wolf, thanks so much for joining me on the show. It's been such a pleasure chatting to you and getting to know you better and sharing some stories that people might not be so familiar with.
Yep, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Love talking about old school days.
So if anyone wants to keep up with you online, Wolf, where can they find you?
Wolfie VGC or Wolfie Glick should be one of those two on most platforms. And if not, it wasn't meant to be. Don't sweat it.
So now it's time for some YouTube spiel from this side of things. If you enjoyed what you've heard, once more, please do like and subscribe. It would really mean a huge amount. And drop a comment, because Wolf's given us so much food for thought. As with all my guests, plenty more episodes on the channel too to enjoy. As I say, 50 episodes at this point, are a broad range of people from the community. Competitive, but not just video game, trading card game as well, Go, Pokemon Unite, as well as content creators, shiny hunters, the works. There's bound to be something for everyone. You can use the hashtag 6Pokemon, 1Life Story to spread the word about the show. Also on my channel, I stream competitively, casually, challenge runs in Pokemon games. I do silly Pokemon comedy skits. Working on a pretty unique EUIC video right now, the likes of which I haven't seen other people do. I'm sort of Wolf a few years ago, just throwing paint at the wall and seeing what sticks here, but I'm looking forward to seeing what people think about that. At Chazingdra across Blue Sky, X, Instagram and TikTok as well. Got my Discord community link below, so it'll be a pleasure to see you in there. And any feedback on the show or guest suggestions, chazingdra@gmail.com is the email address you need. And episodes of this podcast drop every Wednesday. Right then, Wolf, so with that being said, it's time to get into your Rapidash round. If you're not joining us over on Patreon for that, then it's goodbye from Wolf.
Bye-bye.
And it's goodbye from me. See you next time on Chazingdra Chats, where there'll be another 6 Pokemon, 1 life story. And thank you so much for getting me to 50 episodes. I'm loving putting out this podcast. It's around a year now since I launched my channel, and thoroughly enjoying creating content for you all. So here's to many more episodes in the future. And thank you so much for all your support.
Is it Chazingdra because of Kingdra? I never realized, because I didn't know how it was pronounced. Like I'd only seen it spelled. I didn't know how he pronounced it.
Chazingdra, yeah.
That makes sense.
Chaz plus Kingdra. A lot of people assume it's Charizard, but yeah, no. Very much Kingdra. Well, there we go. But how are you feeling about this bonus questions?
Yep, sounds good.
First thing, tell us more about this Road to World documentary. At the time of recording, the first episode has come out. Thoroughly enjoyed what I've seen. I mean, what was it like to make?
It was fun. Yeah, it was stressful. Having people follow you around and like understanding that like your tournament finishes are like being used to make this documentary and like or docuseries, and you can't control necessarily the finishes that you're gonna get, but like that's kind of how